Greetings! Welcome to LDI 1.4. In this LDI, we're going to take a look at the Titanic catastrophe or tragedy, however you want to say it. Appears on page 11 of your textbook, and it's titled, Did Everyone Have an Equal Chance of Surviving? The Titanic, the largest ship that had ever been built up to that time, left Southampton, England, towards New York on Wednesday, April 10th, 1912. It was carrying many rich and famous of both England and the United States. Many thought the Titanic could not sink. It made a stop in Chesbrough in France, and then it took on many third-class passengers. And then it had a brief stop at Queenstown, Ireland, and then set course across the Atlantic. On the evening of April 14th, it struck an iceberg, and in less than 2.5 hours, by 2:15 a.m., the next morning it sank. Only 710 survived among the 2,201 passengers and crew. A question of interest may be whether or not everybody had an equal chance of surviving. In the language of testing, our hypotheses would be the null is that men and women had the same chance of surviving. The alternate is that men and women did not have the same chance of surviving. Well, we're going to let P sub m represent the proportion of all men that survived, and P sub w represent the proportion of all women that survived. Using the notation of proportions given above, rewrite the null and the alternate. Okay, so if we're going to do that, come down here and write that. Let me get the right pen here. To write that, we're going to use that notation. We would say that the proportion of men, we're going to write that as P sub m here, was equal to P sub w. And notice what that's saying is, let's go back up to the text version of it, is that both men and women had the same chance of surviving. In other words, we're saying right here that men were equal to women with respect to their chance of survivorship. Okay? Now, let's take a look at what the alternate would be. Well, the alternate is going to be, well, that the proportion of men that survived is not equal to the proportion of women that survived. Okay, that's a not equals right there. So what that says, if we come back up here, is that the proportion of men versus the proportion of women are not the same. In other words, they do not have the same chance. Okay? All right. So the data we're taking were statistically significant. What hypothesis was accepted? Okay? So the hypothesis that was accepted, we accepted the alternate. How do we know we accepted the alternate hypothesis? Well, the data were said to be what? They were said to be statistically significant. Well, if the data are statistically significant, okay, so the data obtained were statistically significant. If the data obtained were statistically significant, then we know what that means is to reject the null hypotheses. Okay, well, that's a short little LDI. Hopefully you got everything you need from there, and we'll see you all back here in LDI 1.5.